Ed Gein, the real-life monster who inspired horror itself. An original Midnight Madness story, true crime horror. There are monsters that exist only in stories, and then there are the ones that walk quietly among us. The kind who live next door, smile when you wave it, and keep their nightmares locked behind closed doors. This is the story of Ed Gein, a quiet man from Plainfield, Wisconsin, whose crimes became the foundation for Psycho, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and the Silence of the Lambs. But the truth behind Ed Gein's life is far more disturbing than any movie ever dared to show. The boy who never left home. Edward Theodore Gein was born in 1906. He grew up on a small, isolated farm with his parents and older brother, Henry. His father, George, was an abusive alcoholic. His mother, Augusta, was something else entirely, a religious fanatic who believed the world was evil and women were instruments of sin. She controlled everything: what her sons ate, who they spoke to, what they believed. Augusta drilled it into Ed's head that women, except her, were wicked, diseased, and destined for hell. And Ed believed her. He worshipped her. He wasn't allowed friends. He wasn't allowed to leave the farm. He was homeschooled, fed sermons about damnation, and forced to confess sins he didn't understand. By all accounts, Ed was quiet, polite, even shy. But something was forming behind that politeness, a fascination with death and the human body. The turning point. In 1944, tragedy struck. A fire broke out on the Gein property. When firefighters arrived, they found Ed's brother Henry dead, lying face down in the dirt. The cause of death was asphyxiation, but Henry's body showed bruises on his head, as if he'd been struck. No one ever proved Ed had anything to do with it. But after that day, Ed lived alone with his mother. 2 years later, she died, and when Augusta Gein took her last breath, whatever was human in Ed seemed to die with her. He boarded up her bedroom and the sitting room, preserving them like a shrine. He slept next to a stove in the kitchen, surrounded by filth, trash, and decay. But at night, he went looking for company. The grave robber of Plainfield. Between 1947 and 1957, strange things began happening around Plainfield. Tools disappeared from sheds, jewelry and personal items went missing from graves. Cemeteries were found disturbed, freshly dug, but no one buried there recently. When police investigated, they found empty coffins. Bodies missing. No one suspected Ed Gein. He was quiet, helpful, and known for doing odd jobs around town. He babysat neighbors' kids. He fixed furniture. He was that harmless, lonely man people pitied, not feared. But Ed wasn't stealing valuables from graves. He was taking something else. Bodies, specifically women. Women who resembled his mother. At night, Ed would dig up corpses. He'd take them home, cut them open, and study them. He said he was trying to understand anatomy, but what he made out of them tells a darker story. The discovery. On November 16, 1957, a woman named Bernice Worden went missing. She owned the local hardware store. The last receipt written that day listed one customer's name, Ed Gein. Police went to Ed's farm that evening. When they stepped inside, they found something no one could have imagined. The house was dark, cold, and reeking of decay. There were bones everywhere, human bones. In the kitchen, they found Bernice Worden, her body hanging upside down, headless, gutted like a deer. But that was only the beginning. The House of Horrors. Investigators searched the property and uncovered what the newspapers would later call a museum of death. Among the items they found were a lampshade made of human skin, chairs upholstered with flesh, bowls crafted from skulls, a belt woven from nipples, a box full of human noses, and a collection of masks, faces, carefully removed from the skulls of women and preserved. In his bedroom, they found a suit made of human skin, stitched together to resemble a woman's body. Ed confessed that he wore it at night. He said he wanted to feel closer to his mother. The mind of a monster. When questioned, Ed Gein spoke calmly. As if describing someone else's dream, he admitted to grave robbing, to building his trophies, and to killing two women, Mary Hogan and Bernice Worden. He claimed he'd been in a daze, that he didn't remember everything, but his stories shifted constantly. Sometimes he acted proud, sometimes confused, sometimes almost childlike. Psychiatrists diagnosed him with schizophrenia and psychosis. He was found legally insane and sent to a mental institution where he would spend the rest of his life. The aftermath. News of Ed Gein's crime spread like wildfire. Reporters, filmmakers, and psychologists all tried to make sense of what he'd done. But the truth is, you can't. There is no logic behind someone who lived among the dead and tried to rebuild his mother out of corpses. Hollywood, however, turned him into legend. Norman Bates in Psycho, Leatherface in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Buffalo Bill in The Silence of the Lambs, all inspired by Ed Gein, the quiet man from Plainfield, who turned death into an art form. The grave and the legend. Ed Gein died in 1984 at age 77, still confined to a mental hospital. When he passed, reporters gathered around his grave. A grave that, ironically, would later be vandalized and stolen piece by fans. Even in death, he couldn't escape the morbid fascination he created. And if there's one thing that remains true about Ed Gein, it's that his legacy isn't just horror. It's the proof that real monsters don't live under the bed. They live across the street, they wave when you drive by, they fix your fence, and they smile when you say hello. They say madness begins at midnight, and sometimes it's wearing a human face.